Pittsburgh Steelers defense might be the best unit in all of football. And with the dam looking like it's about to break for the offense, the Pittsburgh Steelers move on to 3-0 after their win over the Los Angeles Chargers. As always, I'm going to be going over both sides of the football and reviewing how this Week 3 matchup went for our Pittsburgh Steelers. My name is Christian Bober, also known as Crytose, and real quick before the video starts, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment, and turn those post notifications on. And with that being said, let's dive right into this video. Let's start out with the quarterback position, and Justin Fields had an amazing game. I don't think he's giving up that QB1 position anytime soon. Fields had 245 passing yards, a passing touchdown, and an interception with only 6 yards on the ground and another touchdown on the ground as well. This week, Fields took that step that I've been waiting for him to take. Like I said in the last video, Justin Fields has been looking downfield as a passer first, and that definitely showed in this game against the Chargers. There was numerous plays where he rolled out of the pocket, extended the play, and kept his eyes down the field and just drove the ball where it needed to be. And that's the maturity and progression that I've been waiting to see out of Justin Fields. We definitely saw it since he only had 6 yards on the ground, and he just kept throwing the ball downfield, especially over the middle of the field. And looking at Fields' passing chart, it's probably one of the best charts we've seen in recent years. I think Arthur Smith has set him up excellently to grow and progress in this Steelers offense. And two major things that stood out to me were his time to throw and how he played against the blitz. One of Fields' biggest flaws before he came to the Steelers was his time to throw and his decision making. And this week against the Chargers, Justin Fields had the lowest time to throw out of his whole entire career. With an average of 2.5 seconds to throw, Justin Fields was making quick and decisive reads, which absolutely needs to be sustained, and it shows a lot of positive growth in himself. And against the blitz, he was 8 for 9 for 119 yards with 0 turnover-worthy plays and a touchdown. I think Fields is playing quick, smart, and decisive football, which is exactly what the Steelers need. He's not having many turnover-worthy plays other than his one interception, which was batted up. Fields is preparing to be the starter against the Colts, and I think with another great performance like that, he can definitely solidify himself as the QB1 whenever Russ comes back fully healthy. Moving on to the running game, the Pittsburgh Steelers could not run the ball in the first half. They just could not get it going. But in the second half, whenever they needed it the most, the running game came alive, and Najee Harris finished the game with 70 rushing yards for 3.9 yards per carry. And Najee Harris has put together 3 games in a row with almost the exact same stat lines. The offensive line looked pretty good with Najee running behind them, and there was a lot of crucial runs later in the game whenever we were milking that clock and we had a big lead on the Chargers. Najee could have had an even better statistical game if they got the run game going in the first half, and he also gave up a touchdown just so they could milk the clock. He could have added his first rushing touchdown on the season and pushed the score to 27-10. Jaylen Warren wasn't much of a factor in this game, and Cordell Patterson had a few meaningful carries, especially towards the end of the game. But one thing that I'd like to see moving forward is getting Justin Fields more involved in the rushing game. You gotta let Justin Fields be Justin Fields sometimes, and I loved what I saw from him as a passer, but I'd love to see him get, 30 to 40 yards on the ground every single game. He's such a threat on his legs, and to add that threat as a passer, it's gonna be damn near impossible to contain him. Calvin Austin had an amazing game with 4 receptions for 95 yards and a big touchdown. If Calvin Austin can continue to sustain this success, it looks like the wide receiver 2 concerns won't be as big as an issue as I thought they would be. It's still a big if, but seeing that production out of Scotty Miller and Calvin Austin outside of George Pickens is really a good sign for the wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3 positions. Speaking of George Pickens, he had 5 receptions for 57 yards. A decent day for him. I know he can do way bigger things whenever he gets to targets, and those will come with those big deep plays like we've seen in previous weeks. But that's why the wide receiver 2 is such a big concern, and that's why the Calvin Austin performance was so huge, because George Pickens not going to be able to go off every single week. You need those other targets to go off to support your offense. Pat Freiermuth had a decent day with a big drop that could have put the Steelers in more reasonable field goal range. Justin Fields put the ball only where Pat could get it, and he just didn't come down with it. For someone you're paying that much money, you'd like to see them get more involved in the passing game and to come down with those types of catches, but I think his production will continue to go up from here on out. The offensive line looked decent, with Zach Frazier continuing to be an absolute animal as a center. And another important position to point out was Broderick Jones, who had an alright game with a few missed assignments, but whenever he was blocking, he actually looked pretty good. Dan Moore was whatever, but a big thing that I noticed was Dan McCormick coming in as that swing tackle, going from the left to the right, playing both sides outside of Dan Moore and Broderick Jones. He did a really good job on run plays. I think that's something to monitor, with him usually playing interior O-line and now him playing on the outside of Broderick Jones and Dan Moore. Truffautanu is essentially out for the season, which is a big loss, especially as your first round pick not playing the whole season except for one game. But the Steelers lucked out, you could say, with them loving to play Broderick Jones out of position. He'll be able to fill in for Truffautanu and hopefully progress throughout the season. And with all that being said, let's move on to the defensive side of the ball, starting out with your boy TJ Watt. TJ was going up against Joe Alt, the first round rookie, who's been absolutely great the first 2 weeks, but there's no other defensive player in the league quite like TJ Watt. Early in the game, one-on-one, TJ forced a holding penalty, and then later in the game when Heineke entered, he had a big time sack against Joe Alt. With that being said, Alex Highsmith went down with a groin injury and exited the game, but in came Nick Herbig, who had an absolutely electric game. Herbig had 2 sacks, 3 pressures, and Browns fans' favorite stat of 50% pass rush win rate. Highsmith is expected to be out a few weeks, but it's looking like Nick Herbig can fill his shoes pretty well. And the Steelers' defense is either first or at least top 5 in almost every single defensive category. J.K. Dobbins and the Chargers' rushing offense came into this game as one of the best units in the NFL, and the front 7 and defense as a whole absolutely shut that down. Patrick Queen led the Steelers in tackles and had a pass deflection, arguably his best game as a Steeler so far. And it's so nice having a few capable inside linebackers that can cover over the middle of the field. It's really nice to have that. There were some issues throughout the game with big plays down the middle of the field, but with the Steelers' bend not break mentality, they fought through it, and especially when Heineke came in, it was just non-existent. And with that, the Steelers have elevated a familiar face with James Pierre entering the 53-man roster. And with that, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 3-0 on the season, first place in the AFC North and the first seed as of right now in all of the AFC. They look forward to playing on the road against the Indianapolis Colts. Make sure to subscribe, like, turn those post notifications on, and leave a comment. I always love to hear your guys' feedback, and I'll see you guys next week when we play the Indianapolis Colts.